won, as you know from my previous video. I actually won my store championships. You can see here the cards. Uncle Engine, the Collected Company, and the Arbor Elf. And of course, my LGS was kind of gracious enough to give also a box of Modern Horizons too. Set boosters to the winner, which it happened to me. The entry was not cheap, but the prices were definitely incredibly top heavy, which is great when you win, and also incredibly incredibly top heavy and incredibly nice also. So that was the thing. So I thought I would make a, sorry, one sec. I will make a kind of a, I will actually, this video will have 3 parts. First, I'm going to try to talk about my games, how did it go, etc, etc. I think this is interesting. I wrote a tournament report in the Discord of Skills. You are more into reading than writing, so listening to me, but maybe you're not since you're on YouTube. And yeah, and then I'm gonna talk about like 5 things I've seen people do or basically don't do with scales, because there's been like a little bit of an uptick of some streamers playing scales, especially Francisco and Mana Symbol and Zach from, which is Mana Symbol, who you know, they were playing and I was trying to coach, but obviously Stream Chat is not the best coach. So I think there were some things that maybe they were not making and doing, and newer players also don't do, and also maybe people that are experienced with the deck don't do, right? So like a little bit of a setup. I found out there was the championships. I thought there was one on Sunday, and I couldn't go on Sunday. But then they announced on Wednesday that the other LGS I go to, which is the one I go the most, they would do it on Saturday. And I said, okay, let's go. I had a few days to prepare. I had already been toying around with the idea of the Esper Sentinel Hunt skills build. So I figured, you know, why not just... I tested a bit more, and I came up with some different things. I'll go over the list in a second. And... you know, like, I think the preface is nice to say that I am 30 years old. I know I look 40, but that's okay. And the thing was that I have never actually won anything. I've never been the champion. You know what I mean? I've been competing all my life. When I was a like teenager or so, like until I was 17, I was playing basketball a lot. We managed to win our league once, like the first part of the league, but then we were eliminated in the playoffs first round. I played a bunch of Yu-Gi-Oh! And even though I almost went to like a weekly tournament, I actually was never the winner. You know, there was always a top 8, and I was always losing like top 4 in finals, or sometimes even, of course, not making top 8. Even the same with nationals of Yu-Gi-Oh! And everything. I never actually managed to like close the deal. Then, you know, when I started playing StarCraft, I was a pretty good player, but I was never like top player. And of course, I never won a tournament there. And the same with, you know, all the other pursuits of my life, like running and table tennis. I never managed to win anything, you know. And so actually this made this made this extra special to like finally, after all these years, be able to win something, you know, and show that tenacity and hard work can actually pay off. And I think I did the ingenuity of trying to play skills and at the highest level and stick with the deck after, you know, so many, like maybe like almost 3 years now. I think it has made me a very good skills player, and that paid off really big time when it comes to higher stage tournaments, where people prepare a lot against like specific meta decks, and you come with a deck that's prepared against their deck, but their deck is not prepared against yours. And I think really that's an advantage that is really cannot be overstated, how much of an advantage it is that your opponent has not even considered your deck when building theirs. They might have cards that are good versus your deck, but they have not thought of your deck, whereas you have thought of their deck. And you have played against their deck a lot more than they have played against yours, which gives you really an enormous advantage to somebody that's an expert. So maybe I'm not the best player in my LGS, maybe not, for sure not the best player in the world, but I'm definitely a good skills player, definitely good enough to compete against very good players. And it really showed there when I was playing against good players that have not played as much meta skills as I have done. So the round, I mean, the game, you know, we set up there, we were like an hour late. It was around 24, 30 players maybe, I don't know. Maybe we probably were not 30, maybe we were like 28. I really didn't count. And round 1, I played against a player I played against a lot. And she's normally playing some kind of control decks. And she was in fact playing Esper Control, like old school Esper Control with Fact of Fiction, Esper Charm, Path to Exile, Frantic Inventory. It was really like a crazy deck, you know what I mean? Like all Blast from the Past. She did not know it was in fact the championship, so she was just coming with a deck that she enjoys playing. And I don't know how well she did in the end, but basically the fact of the matter is, like, in the first game, it basically went to like a million times. Like we were turn 15 or something like this, or turn 20, I don't know. And I kid you not, I did not miss a land drop that game. I drew I had Esper Sentinel. Esper Sentinel was a machine, drew me a million cards, and they were mostly lands. I had shuffle well and everything, but really, like, I did not miss a land drop in the whole. Like, I was a time where I had 4 cards in hand, and they were all lands. I was like, I can't believe it, I'm not drawing any spells. I finally managed to find my spells, like at the bottom half of my deck. They had to be there, right? And I killed them. But the problem was there were like 10 minutes left on the round, and I thought, okay, well, I most likely can not lose game 2. But in fact, I actually managed to lose game 2 in 10 minutes, because my opponent just kept like, they went like Stony Silence, Rest in Peace, and on top of that they had Colonnade, and they had double Colonnade and a bunch of like Armistice Charms and what's the name, and Cryptic Comments to tap my team, so I couldn't really kill them, and they would just keep attacking me with a Colonnade, and eventually just kill me with a Colonnade. It was like kind of hilarious actually. So I just died to a Colonnade, and there was 1-1. They were like, we were in turns already, so we just took the draw. Not a great start of the tournament. Then I was played against a Blue Red Morktide, and my opponent, I think he was one of the most expert Morktide player. First game 1, they had like 3 or 4 expressive. I think they casted 3 and they snapped for another one, so they drew a million cards, and that meant that they found 3 Morktide regions, and one of them was like a 15/15, and I charmed and everything. And even though they made a mistake by thought scouring me when I had a Lurus out, which put off a list on my graveyard that I could cast, it was just not enough, like the dudes were too big, and I just ran out of Shambwalkers at some point. Then game 2, I managed to win the game by basically, I had a nice play where my opponent had a Fetchland and a land and a Morktide. They just played, right? And I noticed that, they were kind of like autopiloting by always fetching at the end of turn, even though they didn't have to. So I was like, I had a path in hand, and I said, okay, I'm gonna pass my turn. I mean, I had a Saga and enough mana for a path, and so I passed my turn with the Saga. My opponent had the Morktide, and when they went to fetch, I passed the Morktide, and they couldn't respond. It's pretty cool, I think. Then I managed to do a misplay that game where I forgot to relic one of their Armistice Charms, and actually it was kind of brutal because they went Armistice Charm, Stony Silence, Morktide region, like pam pam pam. Those are the cards they found out the Armistice Charm. So the game went quite long, but I managed to win with some constructs and some beatdown basically in the end. But it was definitely a super super close game. And then on game 3 we went to turns, and my opponent passed with 4 mana up. I had a Ravager, a construct, and I think it's a Vast, and I attacked with all of them. They tried to Armistice Charm my construct, then I ate it with the Ravager, and then they bolted my Ravager, and I just said this is a Vast, and I killed them. They were like kind of surprised. I don't think they were that experienced against scales, but that's, you get some free wins thanks to this. And that was definitely, not an easy start of the tournament. A draw into a win on turns. I was like, wow, if I had lost that one, I was probably out of top 8 already, because there were only 5 rounds. But I managed to cling the win, which is pretty hot. I was very happy. Then I played against Dredge, round 3. Is a known Dredge player in my LGS. They used to play Spirit, and then they just switched to Dredge at some point, and they just play Dredge all the time. They didn't have an updated version. They played kind of the more old school version with Life from the Loam and everything. And game 1 was kind of a non-game. That's the kind of thing that happens with Dredge. Sometimes you go hot, but sometimes you just go so cold. So they went to 4. They didn't really do anything. They found 3 Gripping Chills, which put me at 6 life eventually. But I just killed them, with some big police and everything. So it was cool. Then game 2, I had both Relic Opportunity and Torpor Orb. If you guys are not bringing in Torpor Orb against Dredge, you should, because it's very good against them. So when turn 1 Relic, turn 2 Torpor Orb, I built my board. They were kind of like, they had Nox of Agonas that did nothing, because of course, and then they just kind of like were really, really, they didn't really know what to do, and eventually I just had a big ballista and killed them. So that was also kind of good. I was like, okay, I beat this guy pretty easily. Then I played against Greasy Shadow round 4. Also, I don't think my opponent was the most experienced playing in Scales, and I just kind of like, game 1, they could have killed me if I didn't block correctly, but actually Turn of Guide was really awesome there, because I kept proliferating my Hangavak. I ended up with a 10-10 Hangavak that blocked the Shadow, killed the Shadow, and then killed them on the crackback. And then on round number 5, so I was paired against the top seeded at the time, which was an Infect player that was playing, I think, 3 or 4 Forces of Vigor on the sideboard, and 3 Gem Razors. I was like, oh, bro. Also Gem Razors with humans, But it was pretty, it was pretty sketchy. We actually got to play, but we decided to draw because he was for sure going to get top 8, and then I could also get top 8. Went to get some food, and then we just play the top 8. I was like actually pretty happy at that point, but I realized I have one of this kind of thinking. When I get to top 8s, I generally get to the point of like, oh, I've done something today. I've achieved something. I've gone into the top 8. But still, I was like, man, this is such a bad mindset to have. Like, if you want to, it's much better to win than to top 8, right? So I think the top 8 got like a pack of sleeves, and I was like, okay, that's great, but there's only one Urgo engine. So I decided to, I was like, okay, I tried to focus. I had an hour to kind of like go over my thoughts and try to, all these feelings of satisfaction, just try to focus one game at a time, but really not be satisfied with where I was, right? And I was paired against the 4th seeded player. I went into top 8 with the 5th, and my opponent was on e-tron. Also not that experienced against skills. I mean, that was kind of the theme of the day. It was like, oh, I'm playing against all these players that play these very strong decks, and this player I don't think this is that strong, but it's playing e-tron, and I mean, I don't think they're cheating at all. I just think they were like lucky because they actually almost always had turn Tron. Like almost every game you could see them, they would just land the turn Tron. Sometimes not even with a map. They would just go like Chalice, turn Tron, and just start like slamming. And I was like, okay, let's see. We have a very good answers to a lot of their stuff thanks to Prismatic Ending. We can kill the bridges, we can kill Chalices, we can kill lots of stuff. And I drew a hand that had only 2 drops. Basically, I had Steel Seer, Hangover Walker. I think I had triple Hangover Walker, Steel Seer, and I said, okay, I was on the draw. My opponent, as expected, went turn 2 Chalice, turn 3 Tron, but they followed that with a Thorn Seer and a Matter Shaper. I was like, ooh, no Karn. If they had Karn and they won Karn Bridge, I'd probably lose right there, but they didn't do it, so there was a chance. And I went turn 2 Steel Overseer, of course. I started pumping my boys, pumping. Started making a big game mouse, attacking them, and eventually they had to like Saga for an expedition map, which they cracked to get a Ghost Quarter to try to survive, but then they actually Ghost Quartered me on their turn, which meant that I could regenerate my emos with a Welding Giant. They didn't really see it coming, so they lost there. And then game 2, it was basically I had like turn 1, I think it was like turn 1 Scales. How was it? Yeah, I went turn 1 Scales, turn 2 Hangavac, and then my opponent had clearly dismembered. They decided not to use it. They were like, put it on the table and they took it back. I was like, okay, whatever. Because they asked me, will this get like top? I said yes. And they're like, oh, okay. They're not doing it. It's like, okay, whatever, and then basically in the end, I played the Zavas, and then I played the second Zavas. I played also Zavas and a second Zavas. So I started to put like 4 counters on the Hangavac, but they still dismembered it. So I got the 2 Doctors, and I got 4 counters on the Ozolis, which meant that then I put the counters on the Zavas, and I just had like I think it was like 7/7 Zavas, which just killed them so quickly with the flying. They played a Thunderseer, but it didn't matter. I had 9 power in the air, so it really fast. We just got rid of them. So that was nice. I killed them in like 2 turns after that, and they couldn't do anything about it, which was hot. And I had a prismatic ending for the breach in case they played the Karn. So I was feeling myself. I was feeling like, okay, I'm gonna win this one. And then I played against the top 4 against another Greek Shadow opponent. We had just played the week before, and I think he's a very good player, this guy, and he understands the deck. And I gave him a lot of tips last week, which I kind of regret at the time. But I think in the end, like the best of competition is not just so much winning, but actually getting to compete. Getting to see who can deal better with the pressure, the tension, the misplays. Because you will make misplays in a long tournament like this, 8 rounds. I made misplays, they made misplays. How are you going to psychologically deal with those? How's your strategy going to be, etc. And eventually, what I did is like, game 1, it was extremely close. It seemed that I was going to win. And then, I actually went down to 1 life. So I went to 1. Esper Sentinel was fantastic in this matchup. Every time I played it, I went Esper Sentinel into Esper Sentinel. I drew a bunch of cards. I was really ahead. And my opponent went DRC, and then they dressed on my turn, which meant I couldn't kill them. I was like, damn. Then, on the next turn, they had another dress down after they attacked me with the DRC, so eventually they put me down to 1. And basically it was thanks to this Needle Verge. I was like about to play another Brushland because I don't own the Needle Verge pathways on paper, but I decided to buy it from the shop before, trusting my testing instead of going with something different. And if I had played the Brushland, they're paying 1 life, I would have lost. But thanks to this, I actually didn't lose. So that's pretty hot. A lot of the changes I made to the mana base this last week was to make it less painful. Have more white sources, and actually really was cool to see like this little change I didn't make. This a small change gave me the win in this game 1, which maybe could have lost otherwise. So eventually I win, and I dominate that game. And then Game 2, my opponent goes Stone 1 Ravagan, I Prismatic Ending it, and then from there they play DRC, I play Ballista, they dress down it, which is bad because I lose the Ballista and draw a card, but eventually they only had 3 lands, and they played like a E on 0 to kill my constructs. I didn't even make constructs, so you can play around their things, right? So I got Lurus ahead of them because I had more lands, so I played Lurus, got a Ravager back, had a Nautilus, had a Skills, had a Ravager. At that point, I had an Urza Saga rolling, and on 4 mana, right? So my opponent goes E on 0, they pop it, and they Fatal Push the Lurus, and I'm like, wow. And then first they were there on board at that point because I could just make I had a land in hand, so I just made a construct, stack the construct to a Ravager, made a 4/4 Ravager, and that's enough with the Emos, right, for the kill. But still, I was like, wow, man, you got so destroyed. My opponent, like, 2-for-1 themselves to kill my Lurus, which already was a 2-for-1 on my favor, right? So I think at that point I was going to win anyway. I had a construct going. But anyway, I just killed them there, and it was really, really cool to be like, wow, it really worked. The change that we made to the deck, and also also Lurus being pretty awesome. Lurus was great across. I think it was good in the control decks, and I mean, every match there was not like finished. Even the Mortai matches, like close, just Lurus came up a lot. So I think the Ringware version really shines there. Then there was the finals. And I played the final. I get I've only been 3 times to this LGS. The last, let's say, 4 months or 5 months since they opened back up. And the first time I went to, I lost the finals to this player. They were playing some kind of Imperial Recruiter Texas deck. And we solidly did all of those. I lost. And last week, we were playing the final again. So we were like both 4-0, and we were playing the final of the LGS, let's say. And I got to... And basically, we drew, basically. I was like, maybe I could have won, maybe he could have won, who knows. We drew both of us. One of these games that you don't draw anything. We drew basically a 1-1. So, and then this week I was like, okay, against a simple. And I knew this time around he was playing Burn. See, I knew what he was on. And then he was on the play because he was seated higher than me, which is a bit, sad. And they go, turn 1 Goblin Guy, turn 2. I have a pretty decent hand. In retrospect, I shouldn't have kept it because I had a Pendulum Haven, which is very good, but also this Hangavak, Ravager. So the hand could, in theory, put up a fight if they didn't have turn 1 Goblin Guy and turn 2 Eidolon. But they did have that. So they went I think they actually had only 2 lands the whole game, and they went Guide, Eidolon, and from there it was only Bolts. And basically that was meant to just die, but very, very fast. So then game 2, I went, I think it was something like Esper Sentinel. I think it was something like Skills, Osiris, Esper Sentinel, I went Skills, Esper Sentinel, Zavas. My opponent tried to kill the Zavas, and then I put 3 counters on the Esper Sentinel, and they just had to pay the tax for the Esper Sentinel, and then from there they actually were stuck on mana, and a 4/4 Esper Sentinel plus all the things basically every spell they were casting, I was drawing a card. And that was basically just completely overrun the board with the second board. It just, it was not even close. I really killed him super fast. And then I was into game 3. And I had a good hand. Not a great hand, but I had a good hand. And I had a Prismatic Ending on it. I was like, okay. This hand at least doesn't lose to turn 1 Goblin Guide, right? Because I feel on the draw, if your opponent connects twice with a Goblin Guide, it's kind of a tall order to come back from that against Burn. Because they will deal 4 damage with 1 card, and that means they only need 5 more balls to basically kill you, right? But my opponent once again, they went Goblin Guide and the Eidolon. And I Prismatic Ended the Goblin Guide, and I'm not sure if that's correct or they should have saved it for the Eidolon. But still, I think it's fine to Prismatic Ending the Goblin Guide there, because it could be that they don't have the Eidolon, right? And then you're just saving this Prismatic Ending for no reason. And then the guide, so I only take 2 damage, and then they went for the Eidolon. And I started building my board slowly. I had 4 mana, so I played my Ballista, a 2/2 Ballista. At that point, my opponent had flooded a bit. They had 4 lands and 1 card in hand. And I had lethal on board, and my opponent didn't block the attack. So what I did is I played I would say that's the kind of thing with papers. And then I said, I played as in, not in desperation, but I just kind of played very casually. I didn't make it seem at all that I could win the game at the point. So I just went, okay, I'm gonna cast my Hangouts Walker, sure, and I'm just gonna attack. I had done the same last turn. I just attacked, and my opponent was like, okay, cool, no blocks. I'm like, oh, no blocks. So I had a Ravager, a Topter, a 2/2 Ballista attacking, and a Hangout that was a 2/2 I just casted, right? I'm like, no blocks, okay. In retrospect, I should have played a bit different, but And then I'm like, okay, and then I'm gonna eat my Hangawak. They're like, oh, this is a 34. I said, no, before damage, I'm gonna eat my Hangawak. 7 blocks. I was like, okay. So I eat the Hangawak, make a 4/4, and my opponent goes like, okay, I'm gonna wear and tear your Ravager. You know, thinking, my opponent was thinking value at them. And at that point, I was at 3 life, so they just needed Bumble. My opponent was maybe thinking, I just need to slow them down, and eventually we'll find a bolt. They were not thinking they could die at the moment, right? So they do this, right? They weren't there, and then they have no cards in hand. So I just eat my topper and slam my ballista, make it a 7/7, and just kill them in the spot because they were at 12. And I was like, whoa. And that's just kind of the thing. I mean, I don't think it's a... You know, when you're playing paper, you need to realize you're playing a card game. It's not just about the cards, but it's a card game, right? So it also matters how you play, right? I mean, and I was like, okay, my opponent really wants this Eidolon because they know I have a handful of spells and I only have a 3 life, so they don't want to risk this Eidolon, right? But they will snap block if they think I can kill them. But they think with the Eidolon and with Eidolon in play, I cannot really cast the spells, and eventually eventually they will find a ball and kill me, right? So they're just like, okay, there's basically no chance I lose as long as I have this Eidolon. And you need to play to this, you know, their mindset is, I'm gonna win as long as this Eidolon is alive, right? Maybe they should have updated this mindset because they could have lost at that point, but they didn't do it, and that's how I won, right? If they had saved the wear and tear, I was gonna lose. That was just kind of funny thing, right? But they didn't, so I actually ended up winning the tournament, getting my box, and breaking sense. And I was dead, you know, like if they had played correctly, if they had chumped the ballista, they should have. Then they were drawing a ball, then I would have lost. But you know, that's kind of the tournament play. You know, people make mistakes. I actually made some mistakes, as I said before, like the Armageddon Charm and some other minor things. You know, and you need to really like quickly adapt your mindset and really update. Like really, you cannot just accept. Like you need to really look at what story you're telling yourself in the game, because the games take much longer than online. So you're telling a story of who's ahead, of who's doing the what. You know. And I think it's very important to actually not do that and really try to analyze the board as it is. And I was looking at it, I was like, okay, if I'm not able to win this turn, I'm going to lose. So I need to pretend, you know, if I am playing like that, like, okay, I attack with all, then my opponent will see, okay, there's something up. But if I'm just doing what I did, casually attacking like the last turn, you know, just, oh, okay, let's go to combat. Yeah, okay, I'm just going to attack with these 3 guys. I'm like, okay, no blocks. Like, this is the default response they had like 2 turns in a row, right? They were at, that's how I basically got them to 12. And, you know, that worked. Of course, I was lucky there, and most likely, this was very good, so probably most likely will not make the same mistake again. But yeah, that was the tournament. So I won, I'm very happy. First time I win anything. It makes this extra special. I hope I can keep winning. Scales is great right now. Play it. Let's do some deck tech, shall we? So this is the deck I ended up playing. I'm going to discuss a bit of the... So the week before, I had played the Vegas list. I'm sure all of you guys are kind of familiar with it. I played Ingenious Smith, didn't play Esper Sentinel. And basically, a lot of games I was just dying to my own mana. That list was playing 8 Pain lands, and that was just really rough. Then I started playing around with this, and I said, okay, I want pathways. I want 4 pathways because they're like green-white and they're painless. I still want a number of brushlands because they're like close to painless if you're lucky, and they also allow you to cast your most important color spells. And then there's and then I also realized, you know, when you're playing 8 1-drop, like actually we're playing a ton of 1/1 creatures when we don't have skill on. Pendlehaven is just fantastic. So I wanted to have Pendlehaven, also helps us cast our spells. And then I think it was the Spider Space who commented, "Whoa, Esper Sentinel and Silver Seer is a hot thing." And I was like, "Oh, that's a good idea." So I started thinking about the idea, and I said, "Okay, how can I make my mana even better?" Because with Esper Sentinel, you absolutely want to play turn 1, so you need, I would say, 14 white sources, and that's exactly what I have. You look here, probably 14 white sources on the lower end. 15 Corolli would be better, but you will not always draw the Esper Sentinel, right? It's not that all your 1-drops require specifically for you to have white mana. So only Esper Sentinel does. So I played this, and it was actually very, very good, right? So I played this, and it meant that I could play my Esper Sentinel turn 1 almost every single time. And then somebody in the Discord suggested the Needle Verge pathway as a way to both cast Esper Sentinel. I don't remember who you were, I'm sorry, if you're watching. And then also, late game, if you have already white mana, you can use this as a red source to activate Savas, right? Because one of the things I also realized with my testing is that Spires and Industry are great because they allow you to cast both Sentinel, Scales, Inch Strings, and activate Savas. And cast Lures, right? So they're really like fantastic. So But they cost you life, right? So you don't want to be playing maybe more Blush lands or something like that. And Power Depot I didn't also want because I don't want to tap lands on my deck that had basically 17 1-drops, right? So I didn't want to play any tap lands at all. No Llano Ouroboros, no Power Depot. So Neil Bird's Pathway was completely painless. Allowed me to sack with Zavas, which came up a few times during the tournament painlessly, and also casted Spasaniel for free, right? For no mana. So I think the mana base is really fantastic. I think that was I must say this was really good. Razorback Ticket was also really good. It works really well when you have only 24 lands because it's always untapped and it always casts all your spells, right? This is your first land you play, and you know you only have one more. And I like playing two because you know you only have one more in the deck if this is the first one you play, so it's not gonna be that bad. And you can just consider them a tap land from there on. And the tap land that will cast Lurus, and it will also cast your green spells and white spells for free. One thing I did a lot this tournament is to attack with Zavas. Give Zavas flying and attack a lot with it, which is kind of cool. So I think that's actually kind of nice that it all tied together to, you know, like allow easy Zavas flying with no pain, which allowed me to race in many situations. And then, as I said, this percentage was just fantastic. It was great in almost every situation. I don't think I set them out at all. They were good in so many, you know, matchups, like Control, like even against Dredge, you know, you can play it, you draw a card. I mean, it can get you closer to your hate pieces. Skills is a critical mass deck, right? So Skills is a deck that wants to have enough stuff to sacrifice the Ravager to make a lethal attacker, right? And as percentage will help in that regard because they will get you stuff. As percentage can also be sacrificed. And most importantly, if you are taxing your opponent's mana, Skill really is a punishing deck because if your opponent is spending 2 or 3 mana to bolt your creature, and you're just responding with a Welding Jar, or you're still getting value out of it with Ravager, you're so ahead at that point. You know, it's very hard for your opponent to come back from basically just you know, like having to pay 3 mana for a bolt, and then, you know, having your board basically intact afterwards. And of course, Welding Jar and Pendelhaven really work well together with Esper Sentinel. So I really think it was fantastic. Pendelhaven came up quite a lot actually. Then the other thing, you know, one great thing to do with Esper Sentinel is to pump it. And the card that came up to my mind was that I really wanted to play 24 lands. So Silver Seer is just a good card in that sense. Silver Seer, when something like Esper Sentinel turn 1, Silver Seer turn 2, it means that they either remove the Silver Seer or you will pump your team, making it even harder to remove next turn and making them even make you more cards. So you only really need to put 1 counter on Esper Sentinel, and from that point you almost always will draw a card because nobody will spend 5 mana to Covenant's command you. Or nobody will spend, you know, 4 mana to dress down you. So they will always let you draw the card at that point. And it's really fantastic. So this card was run a couple of times. Of course, you side it out a lot because it's somewhat slow, but it's somehow pretty resilient at the moment, Silver Seer. And I'll explain why. You have 4 Welding Jars, which protects it from bolts and unholy hits, and Fatal Pushes, which are very common. Also, as I said, if you guys present a Silver Seer, it's kind of bad that they bolt it because then you get to draw a card, and you still have an Esper Sentinel around. And then it's also a 2 mana play. That means that Prismatic Ending, it requires 2 mana to exhaust Silver Seer. So if you're on the play or on the draw and you play Silver Seer and your opponent reacts with a 2 mana Prismatic Ending, it's actually kind of rough for them because at that point they basically traded equal on mana. And again, if you have a Esper Sentinel up, you have drawn a card. So I really like the combination of these cards. I think the thing is with Silver Seer, you only play 2 and you can side them out, but when you play it and it sticks, and as I said, it sticks pretty often in this version, you just basically dominate the game afterwards. And I wanted an extra sack outlet, and I really hated Witch's Oven last week, and I didn't want to play more 1-drop, so Throne of God was it. Throne of God is also very good against Chalice, which I was expecting to see a bit more than I did. But, you know, Throne of God is just fantastic. It won me some games. Nice sack outlet. Can sack itself, and, you know, Silver Seer and Throne of God. I had a game where I pumped my top tiers to be 3/3s with Silver Seer. I had 3 top tiers with 3/3s, and then I proliferated them to be 5/5s attack for lethal. So I think it's like more powerful. It's a bit, of course, more clunky than Witch's Oven, but I think the power is also allowing you to sacrifice Welding Jars or sacrificing Moss Nexuses or basically non-creature spells. It's really fantastic. And on the sideboard, this is what I had played. I normally had been playing Damping Spheres, but I didn't really love them so much because I didn't expect Titan or Tron at all. So I decided to go back with the anti-Living End package because there's been some Living End players. And I was like, okay, if my opponent's gonna... It could be my opponent like Living Ends me, right? And I wanted to be prepared for that. And since I was expecting 0 Titans, then that just made sense. Pitino was good. Actually, funnily enough, the other championship was won by Belcher, so the Pitino were good. Relics came up a lot against the Murktide decks and the Dresden decks, of course. Torpor only was used against Stretch, but was fantastic there. It completely stopped them in their tracks. And then the Path to Exile was really relevant against the Murktide deck, and I think would have been also very relevant against... There was one Reanimator deck, which I would also bring in. And the Claims... I brought them in against Burn, and I think that's one of the good reasons to have Claims on your deck. And also they were very good again. They were. I brought them in against the control deck because I could have hit the Stressing Pieces and Stony Silences, right? And they also can be used as a sack outlet for yourself. And of course, Lurus was a no-star. I think you should always play it. I think it's very hard to justify not playing white at the moment because you get to play, as I said, Esper Sentinel. You also get to play Ingenious Smith, Prismatic Ending, and Lurus, and the combination and the way this mana has been. I mean, shout out to Peter Tracy of the Steerings for pushing Spire of Industry so much. The way the mana has shaped up in scales means that you can actually also have access to a lot of sack outlets because you only need one Spire. You probably not will activate Zavas 10 times in a turn, right? You probably normally will start to it once or twice, normally reactively to removal, to Prismatic Endings, to Armiger's Charm trying to steal your shit. You will just activate, right? So we have like these 5 red sources were actually enough to activate Zavas most of the time, and it was really, really fantastic. So that was the deck at that time. This is what would be my updated version. I would play the same main deck. You could try to play Ingenious Smith. That's something I will try to do. Probably Cat. Actually, yeah, that's what I wanted to try. This is just something I want to try. So I actually... Oh. Sorry for the loss of base. But I wanted to try this and this for the... I had a few situations where I actually wanted to have one worker in my deck, so I think we could try something like this. Smith is actually not the greatest in this deck because we don't have that many. I don't want to mess around with my mana playing Power Depots or whatever. I don't want tap lands. I think like something like this where we cut our curve a bit lower and we have still the Steerings to fetch lands if needed, and the Smith is a worst case scenario just a bit there. Could be nice, right? Still, this deck has how many artifacts? It's not a lot, but I think it's worth like a fine number. It's 27, which means you will miss sometimes, but you're only playing 2, right? So you not miss a lot. Like it's really bad if you're playing only 27 artifacts and you are like playing 4 Smiths, so because you will just miss a lot, and that's basically your backbone of the strategy. One card I think I've been really, really impressed with is Prismatic Ending. Prismatic Ending I think should be just a 4-off. Prismatic Ending is really strong in 2 senses. Prismatic Ending is good against your opponent's threats, but it's also good against your opponent's answers. That makes it a super, super like versatile card in my opinion. I think that we should be playing 4. I like the Path to Exile. It gives us an out to Sarah's Avenger as well. I like the Claims also against Burn. And the things I would change on the sideboard other than that would be like, I would add a Gravigus Cage and a Basilisk Scholar. And the reason for this is there were some matchups where I wanted to have like one-offs to fetch with Saga that were like impactful, and it didn't happen, right? So Cage helps against the Yagmoth decks, helps against, of course, Dredge, against any basically shenanigans. And I think it's just so powerful to have one Cage and protect it with a Welding Jar can win you the game, right? So you just don't need to play more than one, that's for sure. And Basilisk Scholar is my plan for Titan. So instead of over sideboarding, playing Damping Spheres and all that shit, just side in the Basilisk Scholar and the Prismatic Endings, kill their amulets, kill their Titans with Basilisk Scholar. So the plan is basically slow them down with Ending, fetch with Saga Basilisk Scholar, find a Ballista somehow, and kill them. That's my plan against Titan for now. But this is the updated version I will be trying next. Okay, then finally, a few things I've seen people don't do with skills, and I think people should be doing with skills a lot more in order to increase their win rate. So what I think, one of the things is pretty basic, but it's very technical. It's a bit technical. But when you're sacrificing your board, when you have Zavas and Ravager and an Ozolis, should always Zavas into the Ravager. That's number 1. Why? Because it basically doubles your counters. Let's say you have a 1-1 Ravager and a 1-1 Zavas and a 1-1 Ballista and an Ozolis. If you sacrifice Zavas to Ravager, you make a 2-2 Ravager, 1 counter comes on the Ozolis, and then you model on the Ballista. Now you have a 2-2 Ballista. And then you basically sacrifice the Ravager to itself, put 2 counters here, 2 counters on the Ozolis, which means you will end up with a 4-4 Ballista and 3 counters on the Ozolis, which end up with a 7-7 Ballista. Let's say you do it the other way around. You sack Ravager, sack Zavas to Ravager, get a counter on the Ozolis, and then you model into the Ravager, so you had a 3-3 on the Ravager. And then you stack the Ravager to itself, putting 3 counters here, making it a 4-1, putting 3 counters on the Ozolis, and then the 4 counters you put on the Ozolis, you put them on the ballista. You end up with an 8-8 instead of a 7-7. That's pretty huge. And so both of the streamers that were trying skills, they were never doing that. They were never modeling everything onto the Ravager and then sacking the Ravager last to get the most amount of counters. And I think that's very important to remember. The second one was not playing Ortho Saga fast enough. I think a lot of people, Saga is kind of a funny card and a really great design in that sense that different decks play very differently. The traditional food Ortho decks, they play it as a value card. They play it as a card that they just want to get full value. They want to make the 2 constructs. They basically play it as a spell that will make 2 constructs and find them an artifact that's not really strong, like a pithing needle or something like that, but like a helpful artifact. The other decks, Ortho Sagas are more Titan, and those normally what they do is they play very early to get their amulets out as far as possible to basically multiply their mana, right? And Hammer and Scales, they are a bit somewhere in the middle, right? You want to get your value out of the Sagas, so I don't think you normally would play turn 1. But I think turn 2 Saga is a really, really, really powerful play. And that's also one of the reasons I'm not playing any tap lands. You play Saga turn 2, allows you to get the Ozolis on turn 4. And turn 4 and 5 are probably the most powerful moments for Scales. Why? Because you can play a Ravager and activate the Enigma's Nexus, and you can play also 2-2-drops. So you can play a Ravager and Hangavak, you can play a Ballista Hangavak, you can have a Ballista out and play Ravager Hangavak. And basically, this burst of tokens, of counters you get with the Ozolis can just kill your opponent if he's not aware of the possibility, right? So I think that's really a powerful play you need to take advantage of. Playing your Sagas earlier can lead to faster kills. You can also think of your Saga as a suspend 2 Ozolis or suspend 2 Zavas. And so I really, really recommend you guys to start thinking, am I playing my Sagas too late? Like, you want to get too much value from Saga. And then the other thing I have is that a lot of people I was seeing, they were sometimes not getting any value from Saga. They were playing the Saga and tapping it for mana and just casting their spells. And I think that's also a mistake. Again, Skills is a deck that has, a critical mass. And you want to hit that critical mass. And Saga basically is one card that will give you 3 artifacts, which means 3 potential counters. If all you do is sacrifice it to them, but with the Ozolis, it's even more, right? Like, it's like, 5 extra counters you can get out of it, right? So it's really fantastic. So what you should do is, if you are not hard-pressed into playing any Ballista or Hangavak on turn 3, just make a construct. You can making a construct turn 3, it's perfectly fine if you can follow it up with a 2-2 drops on turn 4 with an Ozolis out. It's much better to do that instead of playing a Ballista, having it die, and not getting any value out of the Saga. Just making a construct will also tell your opponent that you're going for the value play. And when you're telling your opponent, I'm going for the value play here, they will relax somehow. They will start thinking of their own value play. So they will think, man, if I don't get some value out for the next turn, if I just keep mana up defensively, I'm going to lose to this construct, right? It's going to make a 4-4 or 5-5 construct, start hitting me, and then I'm going to die. So I need to start planning for that. Let me go ahead and get my lures in my hand. And then you go turn 4 and kill them. That's kind of the point, right? I think, and sometimes you will just want to get the value. If your opponent really is trying to go for the value, you will answer it with your own value. You will make your second token, you will get your Ozolis, you will start working, right? That's it. Okay, another one I saw that they didn't do a lot is aggressively to turn 4 Zabas with Saga, even though you don't have an Ozolis. Especially if you have a stack outlet. I've seen a lot of times people get things stolen from them with their magician, like their constructs, and you should and with Zabas and a stack outlet, you can just prevent that very easily, right? It's really good to counter your opponent's 3 mana spell with a 1 mana activation. And of course, they will get to kill the construct, but it's much better than them having the construct, right? So I think aggressively tutoring for Zabas, so that's basically means you need to plan a bit. If you play your Spire of Industry too early, what I mean is from turn 1 to turn 3, you will not have the Spire of Industry, so the red mana, to sacrifice with Zabas if you tutor for it. So it's smarter to leave the Spire's Industry or your Needlebird's Pathways in your hand until turn 4, and then it's turn 4 you play it. Maybe you will not need the sack outlet, but it's really good to have access to the Rainbow Land in that turn, when you maybe you for sure have as a vast, you have the sack outlet, and you can start setting up for it to kill maybe turn 5 or turn 6. So I think another one I'm going to talk about is sideboarding. I think there's 2 things here. People that sideboard way too much removal, becoming a mid-range deck. Scales is not a mid-range deck. Scales is a deck that kills you. right? It's an aggressive deck. You can get some advantage and outgrind your opponent, but generally speaking, you want to kill your opponent. And how do you do that is by having your creatures in play and your artifacts, not by having more prismatic endings and Nature's Claims, and basically bringing in half your sideboard every game. There are situations where it's very good to bring prismatic ending, and I think that was the other end of what I was saying. Prismatic ending is one of the best cards to be playing in Scales in sideboard because it functions as a 2-off. First, it's very good at answering your opponent's threats. What I mean about your opponent's threats is the turn 1 Ravagan. Normally, traditionally, the Scales can struggle against turn 1 Ravagan because even though we have a lot of blockers, they can remove them, and then they hit you and they start ramping, and it's very hard to handle a shadow opponent that's actually ramping, for example. So Prismatic Ending takes care of that. Prismatic Ending takes care of the RC turn 1. Prismatic Ending takes care of the shadows. It takes care of like powerful humans that are like 1 CMC. They get there of Birds of Paradises or whatever like that, threats of your opponent, right? But it also can take care of your opponent's answers. Scales, like an artifact deck, is weak to permanent answers like Stony Silence, Rest in Peace, Pithing Needle. All those cards actually affect Scales quite a lot. And with Prismatic Ending, you can answer it for very cheap, and you can also have it as a card that can answer a threat if needed, right? So I actually think a lot of people, if you're in a matchup where you think your opponent, let's say you're going to have some threats but you're not really worried about them, and they have the possibility to bring in some powerful answers like Pithing Needle or Stony Silence, Rest in Peace, then sideboarding in 2 or 3 endings in your deck can ensure you against the potential outburst of power that can come from their threats and also answer the answers from your answers, right? I think that's really crazy good about Prismatic Ending. That's what I'm playing for. Of course, it's the best against like aggressive decks, but it's really good also against decks that are like, for example, Chalicing you. Nature's Claim is not only pretty bad against Chalice, but against a Chalice deck, you can just bring in your Prismatic Endings. And if they don't have the Chalice, you can also somehow kill them. You can probably exile maybe Spreading Cyst. You can exile Utopia Sprawl. You can exile maybe a Reason Reef they have played. You can exile, there's plenty of things you may be exiling, and it's not a dead card. And it will allow you to, as I said, continue your game plan, right? Prismatic Ending can be both brought as an answer to opponent's threats as an answer to your opponent's answers, which is really great. And then finally, I think one of the things I saw in general is that people were not looking for lethal. I think this is something I do instinctively, and if you play Scales for a long time, you will get to do it instinctively. But in the beginning, you kind of need to force yourself. At the beginning of every turn, even if it's turn 3, you need to start thinking, how am I going to kill my opponent? How am I going to present lethal in the coming turns? And that normally comes tied to how many counters do you have. You will see me while I'm streaming. Sometimes I'm like, turn 4, I'm like, oh, how many counters do I have? Oh, 4, 5, 6. Okay, I have a potentially 6/6 Ballista. Then your opponent does something crazy, goes like, Fetch Shock, do this, and they, they dismember something and they put themselves down to 10. You're like, oh, I can make 6/6 Ballista and kill them, right? So you really need to keep in track of how many counters you have and how much potential lethal you have. And that will also guide your decision making. Let's say you have right now, let's say it's turn 2 and you have another Saga and you're debating whether to play it or not. And you count and you say, oh, I have like 5 total counters right now. But if I got an Nautilus, that would mean 10 counters, that would mean my Immortal is lethal. Then definitely you'll play the Saga. If you're in a situation where you're country, you say, oh, if I play Immortal Saga, I will not have a land. If I play Immortal Saga and they kill it, I'll get super behind. I will not be able to create as many counters. Then you will be maybe take it back and say, okay, I'm going to play something else. So it's really important to continuously keep track of when are you trying to kill your opponent and how many counters you have. They're very related, and it's super important because I see so many people miss skills with skills that they shouldn't be missed if they're on track. And if you start, because by thinking like this, you'll start planning your turns to kill your opponent. Skills can kill you from basically nothing. So you really can, leverage that advantage. Your opponent will not know you can kill them next turn, but you can. So you can play in a weird way, play something random, make a construct that doesn't come, like construct versus like a huge board from the opponent, and then you go, boom, 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 kill it. That's very important. That's my last tip. Okay, guys, this is maybe, I don't know, a long video. I rambled a lot. Maybe I'll try to cut some of it, but maybe not. I think that it's been turned out quite okay. Let me know if you have any questions below. I'm happy to answer them. I will be playing more Scales soon. But this has been a really great journey, and yeah, I wish you all a good day, and see you soon. Bye.